Hello friends, I am Vitaly Portnikov. Donald Trump promises to decide on the participation of the United States in the negotiations between Russia and Ukraine if progress cannot be made in the near future, within the next 2 weeks. If we open the calendar, we will see that 2 weeks is exactly the 8th-9th of May 2025, the 80th anniversary of the victory in the Second World War and the parade in Moscow, which is one of the main political events for the Russian president. Trump may believe that by this date, Putin will be forced to find some way out of the situation that will allow him to demonstrate his peacefulness and his so-called victory in the special military operation East, as the aggressive war against Ukraine continues to be called in Russia. And if Putin does not give such a gift for Trump's 100 days, then on his main holiday, he must agree to some arrangement that, according to Trump, will be accepted by both Ukraine and Europe. Trump insists that he continues to put pressure on Russia, and no one can even imagine how he is doing it. However, Trump did not provide any examples at his press conference of how he is actually pressuring Putin or what real tools he has for such pressure. Nor did he mention, by the way, that the crimes of the Russian president against the civilian population of Ukraine are a problem for continuing further negotiations. Although the American president was directly asked how much the shelling of Kiev hinders the negotiation process, and he gave a direct answer that it is not an obstacle. By the way, the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who was present at this press conference, as we know, Trump always turns his meetings with politicians from other countries into a real show. This was also the case during the press conference with the Prime Minister of Norway, Jonas Gahr Støre. So Rubio, who was at this press conference, said that Putin's strike on Ukraine last night was terrible, but at the same time reminded that the war needs to be ended. And Trump confirmed this opinion of his Secretary of State and promised serious results within the next few days. Perhaps the American president has expectations from the negotiations that his special envoy Steve Witkoff is to conduct in the Russian capital. Although so far, Witkoff has not managed to achieve any real results from the Russian president during his meetings with Putin in Moscow and St. Petersburg. And these official positions, which are now being announced by officials in Moscow, President Putin, his press secretary Peskov, and Foreign Minister Lavrov, in principle leave no doubt that the Russian Federation is not abandoning the strict demands on Ukraine that were put forward by Putin back in February 2022. Only now, these conditions have been supplemented with demands to withdraw Ukrainian troops from those parts of the Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, and Zaporizhia regions that are controlled by the legitimate Ukrainian authorities. And this, from the Kremlin's point of view, should become a precondition for a ceasefire on the Russian-Ukrainian front. I emphasize for a ceasefire, not for any lasting peace, negotiations for which have not even begun yet. So it remains a big question mark whether Donald Trump is presenting wishful thinking as reality to conceal the obvious failure of his negotiation efforts. And indeed, so far, the American president has clearly not decided on what his tactic will be if this failure of Trump's efforts, specifically in relation to the Russian Federation and President Putin, is noticed. And the American president simply has nothing to explain regarding his actual influence on the Russian leader. When Trump was asked about the concessions Russia must make for the war to end, he said that the very fact of preserving the Ukrainian state and that Russia will not seize new Ukrainian territories is already a significant concession on Russia's part. In this way, in the eyes of the American president, the acquisition of Ukrainian territory by the Russian Federation is legitimized. And all these destructions carried out by aggressive Russia on our land over 11 years of brutal conflict, the goal of which, as we all know, is the elimination of Ukrainian statehood. And here arises the question, if we consider that the only concession from Russia is the fact that it will not continue the war and seize new Ukrainian territories, then firstly, what should Ukraine concede? And secondly, why? In such a situation, should Russia abandon its aggressive goals? And again, what are the tools that will compel the Russian president to truly cease military actions on the front line? So far, I know of only one such tool. It is Putin's apparent unwillingness to stop negotiations with Trump. Evidently, the Russian president wants to use the fact that his American counterpart allowed him to break international isolation, thereby demonstrating that efforts to isolate an aggressive country that has destroyed international law and commits daily crimes on foreign soil are completely ineffective as a mechanism to influence the leadership of such a state. And we saw how nervously the threats from Trump to withdraw from the negotiation process were received in the Russian capital. As we can see, even now the American president is making it clear that such an action, such a decision could indeed be made if there is no apparent progress in the Russian-Ukrainian war. And if Russia, on its part, also does not make certain concessions to the White House administration, it remains only to understand what level of concessions from Putin would be significant for him to maintain negotiations with Trump. And to what extent can a ceasefire be considered by the Kremlin as such a concession that could be accepted by the Russian Federation to keep the American president in the negotiation process? We can truly find out the answers to these questions in the coming days and weeks. Thank you, friends. Stay on this channel, subscribe to it, follow my social media and my channels on Patreon, Buy Me a Coffee and Donatello, which help develop these resources. Use the sponsorship feature on YouTube itself. With victory and peace. Good luck.